It's sickening to me to see people get screwed out of these exorbitant amounts of money all over buying something that they thought was built properly, and then they end up on the side of the road somewhere and they don't have the capital to then fix the problem a second time. It's sad. The entire game here is to sell you garbage that degenerates into nothing the moment the warranty is over. That is the culture in modern automotive engineering. It's called planned obsolescence. I call it the Land Rover mentality. We're trying to design these things the way Toyota would have done it in 1991 when they were trying to take Cadillac and Lincoln's lunch money, and they did it. They did it. That is part of my inspiration for what I do and what my team does.
All right, we got Nate here from NextGen, and you are one of the engineers, right? Or are you? What's your role there?
Yeah, so I'm NextGen's dad. I started this company a decade ago by myself when I was in the Marine Corps, and I am the engineer. Everything at NextGen that's proprietary to us was invented by me. Our engineering department is just me and a drafter, someone who's an expert in computer-aided design and all that good stuff. But I actively run the company. I'm the chief exec, and I'm the one, like I said, who invents all these products that guys always see coming out, and girls. I'm the one who invents it all. That's what I do. I'm a transmission engineer by trade, and I've got around 100 some different inventions, almost all transmission inventions.
Today specifically, I think we're going to be talking about mostly General Motors. I do have some questions about Ford, but I think it's just going to be a non-starter. But yeah, so if we're talking about the 10L 1000 versus the what you find in the half tons, right?
Yeah.
What I see a lot of misinformation, and even myself, I start to question what's true and what isn't, because you see the Allison badge on some, and then people say, well, that's only Allison in name. It's not really an Allison transmission. Beyond that, what are the differences between the Allison internals and the regular, 1500 version of the 10-speed?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I'm super happy to answer. So the first thing that people need to know is that the Allison 10 speed is not an Allison. It is not an Allison. It is a licensing of the Allison branding on a General Motors transmission. This is no different than people that get maybe an Apple Watch and they get one of those designer bands at the Apple store that has some luxury branding on it, Gucci, Hermes, whatever have you. It's not really from that brand. They're licensing the ability to use that branding on their product because they believe it'll be able to sell at a higher price, or they'll be able to sell more of them. There are 0 Allison parts in the 10-speed Allison. Not 3, not 5, there are 0. So we build hundreds of them. We build them all day long. I have half a dozen builders here, a little less than that, who all they do all day is put these things together. And I can tell you with absolute and total confidence, it is not an Allison. So I'd like to dispel that belief immediately. It's just untrue. I see so many people that are like, I bought this for the Allison. I'm like, well, you are really going to be up shit creek without a paddle. Sorry, you can bleep that out. But it's just not an Allison. Now, to clarify the differences, so the transmission you're talking about in the 1500s is a 10L 60 through 90, depending on the engine size and a couple of factors like that. But they're all very similar. So we'll use the 10L 80 as a baseline. The 10L 80 and the 10L 1000 internally, to the untrained eye, look almost identical other than size. The 10L 1000 is simply a much larger 10L 80. If you look inside, the input shaft design is almost the same. The valve body is almost the same, 2019 and above for the 10L80 guys. Before that, it was a bit more like the Ford. But for all of the 19 and above 10L80s, they are almost identical to the 10L1000. The main differences that somebody should be looking for is the physical stature of the components inside. So the Allison, for example, has an F clutch housing around the outside that fails a lot. We invented the only one that's actually upgraded and not just a fancy color. It's called a trash can informally. And the trash can in the 10-speed Allison is maybe 30% bigger than in the 10L80. You're going to notice differences like that. As far as the actual engineering and development and design, they're almost totally identical other than size.
Okay. So can handle more torque, basically, layman terms.
That's exactly what it means. Yes,
Yeah.
it can handle more torque. If they followed the General Motors nomenclature, they would probably have called it like a 10L 150E or something like that. But they called it the
Okay.
10L 1000. I guess it sounds cooler to consumers. Anything to mislead them into spending their money. The only major difference I've encountered that really matters is the torque converter. I would say that the Allison 10-speed torque converter is significantly more robust than the 10L80 torque converter. The 10L80 torque converter is almost identical to what you would see in like a Ford Explorer. It has a conical clutch inside. So imagine if your brake pads were the shape of cones. Really bad idea, obviously. We don't sell them. Now, the 10L 1000 features a double sided singular plate at the front of the torque converter. I would label that a significant improvement. Now, they still have very common torque converter issues, but almost all of that is caused by valve body failures that cause the converter to lose the pressure that it needs to operate safely and correctly. So, most torque converter failures in 10 speed Allisons and GMs are actually just valve body failures.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I know I see a lot of people that they've got like a 2021, 22, 23, whatever it is, and they say I haven't had a problem. I've got 50,000 miles, but it's starting to shift rough. Or, it's like they can tell there's a big difference in the shift patterns and just the
Yeah.
behavior of the transmission. And they're really stuck, or they feel stuck because they're still under warranty. They don't want to put aftermarket parts in it. They're worried they're going to cause damage to their transmission. So what you're saying is that potentially, and I've seen torque converters replaced on these receipts from these GM owners, is that what ends up happening? Is they just kind of wait too long? Maybe they don't service it with new fluid, and then it also takes out the torque converter.
Well, so to be very specific, in the 10-speed Allison and the later 10-speed General Motors, there's actually a valve called the TCC regulator valve that is individually responsible for controlling all oil in and out of the converter hydraulically. What ends up happening is that because it moves so much, it tends to wear out a lot. And when it wears out, you start having oil leaking in and out of inappropriate circuits at inappropriate times. And this can trigger the torque converter to try and turn that clutch on when it should be off, or vice versa. It can also result in low charge pressure, which is the pressure used to facilitate the oil coupling process of the converter. And this can result in lost power, abnormally high temperatures, poor fluid complexion, and lots of common issues that you're talking about. Pretty much all of it revolves around the valve body. Obviously, the whole thing's pretty poorly made, but the valve body is the number one problem here.
Hmm. Yeah, man. It's so. How many of these valve bodies have you shipped for? If do you have a number or roughly combined with the Allison and
Um,
the 1500 version?
I mean, several a day on average,
Yeah,
thousands of the kits, thousands and thousands of the
yeah,
kits. I mean, it's unbelievable how many of the kits we sell. I mean, it's a lot. I don't really monitor those specific figures, but
right.
I mean, I'll put it this way. There have been a couple of times where we've actually filled up a UPS truck. So clearly a
Oh,
lot.
geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I know that I always try to be balanced. People always come at me and say, like, look, it's not all of them. I see guys with 150,000 miles, some with 50, some with 80, and they haven't had a single issue. And I think that's the weird thing is there doesn't seem to be a pattern of is it really just a crapshoot where you might buy a new GM and be fine and just or is it that those people potentially maintain their trucks better and swap their fluid every 30,000 and are not towing as much?
So we plot failure data. And that's really important for us as an engineering firm so that we actually know what's going on. We try to get away from opinions and we try to focus on evidence and facts and things that we can tabulate or quantify. And here's what I'll tell you. The majority of failure data, we personally plot modified and unmodified vehicles separately. They're two different colors in the data. And we see that unmodified vehicles, we have an x axis for mileage and a y axis for failures, right? And or excuse me, year, production year, and we plot the failure points. And you'll notice that there's a couple of failure points in the beginning of the data, and then it gets really, really dense in the 60 to 115,000 mile range. And then it starts to pepper off a little bit in the 130 and above 1,000 mile range because most people are not getting there. So when you take anecdotal experiences, they don't give you any good information because there are millions of vehicles out there with this sort of IP in them. So you have to look at it in terms of trends. When people tell me that they've got 180,000 miles on their transmission and their 10-speed Allison is fine, I feel like I'm listening to someone tell me that they have been smoking a pack of cigarettes a day and living off cheeseburgers and soda, and they're 70 years old and they're doing okay. That doesn't mean that is in spite of, not because of. And so I try to explain to people, understand who that person is and what they do. Do they drive disproportionately freeway mileage? Do they have low idle time? Do they maintain the vehicle well? Do they drive the vehicle respectfully? Or are they doing donuts off the rev limiter? Is the vehicle modified? What kind of fluids in the vehicle? What temperate environment is the vehicle around? Cold weather vehicles seem to live longer than hot weather vehicles mile for mile, usually because the fluid is at a lower temperature, and so it's actually a bit more viscous. It's a bit thicker, and that lubricates things better. This slows down the degeneration of soft componentry. So a lot of vehicles in the north, although they'll rust to oblivion, tend to live longer when it comes to transmission lifespans than vehicles down south because they're running on a lower viscosity fluid. It's thinner. There's a whole bunch of data mitigation and adjustment factors that are not accounted for when you hear what people have to say at the individual level. So you have to look at the data.
Man, yeah.
And the data is that they suck. The data is that they're not well built. That's the data.
So what you're saying is that fact that I was looking at maybe a 2025 GM with a Duramax, like a 1500, I shouldn't even bother because it's going to, unless I'm just planning to get rid of it, like 60,000 miles or earlier.
Well,
I mean, it's going to probably have some issue unless, and we can jump into that. Do these updates, is it unknown because you don't have enough data yet and mileage on the latest valve body updates from GM?
Well, I can tell you exactly what they're doing because it's not a new idea. Maybe it's new to the 10L80, but it's not new to the transmission world. They find a valve that's causing a lot of problems because it's leaking or it's damaging the bore, and they update it to one grade higher of material to try and mitigate some of that behavior and get people out of warranty. The vast majority of this is performative BS. I'm probably going to get a letter from GM for saying all this, but I'm just being completely honest. They do stuff like this to get out of warranty and then charge you for the repair. The reason they do that is because it's actually way more profitable. And you have to understand the financial mechanism behind this. These companies have to report to their shareholders every 90 days. And shareholders don't want to hear about how you're making less money this quarter, but it's because you're doing right by the customers. Shareholders don't care about the customers, they care about the return. And so the way that you generate a return is maximizing input and minimizing output. So they look for the bare minimum that's going to get you out of warranty because at that point, you become financially liable for the repair. The entire game here is to sell you garbage that degenerates into nothing the moment the warranty is over. That is the culture in modern automotive engineering. It's called planned obsolescence. I call it the Land Rover mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of flack for that on my channel, as you can imagine. It's nice to I don't have the engineering data like you do to be kind of vindicated in my instincts of it happening, but I'm just looking at anecdotal and looking at volume of anecdotal data and saying, gosh, this does not look like what I remember from maybe the 2000 era vehicles in certain brands. And I still see those old General Motors trucks running around me, these contractors running these 05 53s with 300,000 miles on them. And they're,
Man,
they maybe rebuilt the transmission, but it's not anywhere what we see now, I think.
Man, you want me to be honest with you? You want to know how I feel about modern vehicles? Look, I've had plenty of nice cars, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces, Bentleys, McLarens. I've had all that stuff. I drive a 2000 Buick. That's what I drive, and I'm very happy because anything that fails is $30 at AutoZone, and I know that it's accessible. I
Yeah.
got to the point where I realized new cars are not designed to be good at being cars. They're designed to be good at making money for the companies. And they manipulate these people into spending these radical amounts of money on it. And I try to explain to people, you're about to spend $100 some thousand on a new Denali Ultimate, whatever the hell it is. What does it do that is 5 times better than a 2006 LBZ? What does it do?
Yeah.
And there's no practical answer to the question. So now my answer to people who currently have vehicles like this or who want one, they really want a newer vehicle that maybe they're cheaper to insure or something, or probably not. But my advice to them is the same advice I would have for somebody who owns I use as an example a 6 liter Power Stroke. Terrible engine, really bad engine. But if you're willing to set money aside to do the head studs, the oil cooler, the EGR cooler, and you're willing to invest some capital in the vehicle, they're actually extraordinarily reliable. But you have to get through that hurdle of investing in the vehicle with the known reliability upgrades. Modern
Right.
vehicles are really no different. The only difference is the amount of time the aftermarket has had for nerds like me to come up with these solutions. And so that's my advice to people. If you have one, look, they're pretty good trucks, but the transmission sucks, and the
Yeah.
variable displacement, emissions control BS that they're doing nowadays, that sucks. Well, upgrade the transmission, install the hydraulic upgrades that would prevent this from happening. I don't mean for this to sound like a commercial, but I'm being honest. We don't run ads. Well, why do you think thousands of people buy these things? Because it's worth every ounce to them to have peace of mind and, frankly, get the extra capability out of the vehicle. My advice is the same for anyone with any vehicle that truly wants to keep it for a long time. Find what it's not good at, fix it, and enjoy the vehicle and enjoy its dividends.
What I see this a lot in the Facebook groups and questions to you guys, and mostly Will answering. I've seen this comment all the time. Well, what makes me? Why should I trust NextGen? Because General Motors lasted me 60, 80,000 miles on my valve body. What's your warranty? What's your data like on failures and all that? And Will's responded pretty well, but I'm curious if you want to just give a synopsis of your data and your experience.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that question. So I have a really unusual answer, and it's that you really shouldn't trust any company. Make us earn it. Make us prove it. Don't trust us. Don't trust company A, B, C, D. Make us prove it. So I'll prove it. There's a misconception that this is a new product, and it is not. The 10-speed General Motors and Allison upgrades, we have had them around for 4 or 5 years now, and we're always chipping away at ways to add something new or make it even better. We spend a lot of money on engineering. We better be doing something with it. But the product itself, with these materials, these designs, these plates, these valves, this is not new. In fact, above and beyond that, the principle behind the valves, what we're trying to get intellectual property protection on, the bunanitrile seals, the stainless steel billet valves, all of that design that I have used in this kit when I designed it, I was doing that on Chryslers and Toyotas before this transmission even existed. So we actually have millions of miles of data on this design. And what we tell people is that we have a lifetime valve body warranty, and we have done that on 10-speed valve bodies ever since we made the first one. So there's really only two possibilities. One is that we are actively hemorrhaging money trying to keep up with that, which we're not. Or two, we made a valve body that's not going to kick our ass, our butt.
Yeah.
And so what I tell people is we're so proud of this item that we actually tell you in writing, drive it forever. Drive it 1 million miles. Drive it 2 million miles. You're not going to have any issues. And if you're the one guy or gal who does, you break it, we replace it. Good luck. In addition to that, we're actually so confident, and we have so many of these out there, and they've been so successful that we actually warranty the O-rings themselves, because that was a concern for some people. We
Yeah.
have all the data to prove it not to be concerning, but I know some people haven't seen that data. We actually warranty the O-rings for life because we specifically put them places where they don't have the capacity to wear out over time based on the amount of friction that is applied by how much protrusion they have from the valve and all sorts of factors like that. These are the same O-rings used in Toyota torque converters from the 80s, and I can assure you that nearly all of those still work. We're really proud of the design. We have so much data on them that to us, it's not even faith or trust, it's just fact. These are the most advanced parts that can be made for this transmission. And the last thing I would tell people is that we don't have 800,000 vehicles immobilized because they're not safe to drive. So I think we're doing better than General Motors.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you about those O-rings. That was another thing. And instinctively, when I look at it, I'm looking at the General Motors valves and I'm like, oh, they're all metal. And then you see the O-ring around there, but then you start to wonder, is that going to break down? And, and I'm glad you answered that because it's always the question, anytime you see rubber, plastic, anything, people immediately think, oh no, it's not going to be durable.
They're the same O-rings that are used in every other thing that moves in the transmission, your apply pistons, your balance piston. It's the exact same material. It's actually the exact same manufacturer. So, to be honest, that is a rumor that was started by a different company that is on a no-sell list with us, and they're trying to divert capital away from us to them so that they can sell stock parts to people and pretend that's not what they are. I'm not going to name the
Wow,
company, but they know who they are, and I hope they're mad about it.
man, what a mess.
I know.
uh, wow.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
try to be as honest with people as possible. And that's why it frustrates me when I see, some companies, not all, there's some excellent people in the transmission industry, but some companies that just blow smoke up people's, backside. And, it's really sad because as a consumer, they don't know the better. I imagine it's a lot like, the whole pharmaceutical medical industry. The average person is not a doctor. So when you hear conflicting information, that's probably really scary to the average person. I'm not a doctor. When I hear conflicting information, I'm like, well, who do I believe? You sound like you know what you're talking about, and you sound like you know what you're talking about. That's a scary
yeah,
position for someone to be in when they're talking about spending a lot of money or they're talking about their health. I can't relate to the medical end, but I can relate to automotive engineering. And I can tell you that is why, if you see what we do, we post so much data. We prove to you that we're actually doing something here during the day because we want people to see the facts. If you do independent research, you'll see why we're the option. And that is the whole reason I spend so much time collecting this information for people. It's sickening to me to see people get screwed out of these exorbitant amounts of money all over buying something that they thought was built properly. And then they end up on the side of the road somewhere and they don't have the capital to then fix the problem a second time. It's sad.
yeah. The secondhand market's going to really be a mess here soon. I mean,
Yes.
most of these cars, including all the other brands that after COVID have had these terrible cheap parts in them. I mean, you're starting to see it happen. Everything's been under warranty so far, but now we're starting to get to that point where things aren't under warranty, like the person that got, Joe Constantine, who has started that Facebook group with the rear wheel lockup information, and he's still sitting there waiting for General Motors isn't going to take care of it. He's a secondhand owner. He's not under warranty, and he's just screwed. And you got a $10,000 bill for a truck that should be able to handle 100,000 miles of work.
I feel so bad for his situation. I actually know about his situation. It rolled up the hill to me. And I feel so bad, man. And the worst part is Will actually reached out to General Motors. I didn't even know he did this until after the fact. Will, on our sales team, reached out to General Motors to try and say, hey, you have like a Takata airbags level crisis brewing, and our engineer fixed it, and we want to know if you have any interest in hearing about it, and like maybe we can all do business together and help you dodge a bullet. And they really just weren't interested. And that's not me singling out General Motors, because to be honest, ZF and Eaton Fuller have done the same thing to us. Anytime the OEM has a problem and an aftermarket engineer fixes it, they just think that we are second class citizens, straight to the back of the bus. They really look at us as lesser than them. And the issue is that clearly the products that they're releasing don't work properly. And clearly our bills get paid by making ones that work better. So why don't you listen to what we have to say? And I've made that point to some pretty damn big companies. And they find it offensive, but that's okay. The truth hurts.
Yeah, and they don't have. I've talked to a couple other people that are more connected to these engineering teams at General Motors and Ford, and they're there's so much red tape and so much certifications, and they want to own it and they want the patent. Probably they don't want. There's part of it is being upstaged. Like they shouldn't be the ones asking for help or getting help. So it's a little embarrassing, I think. And then the other part is just they're cheap. I think I personally imagine that they have enough engineering talent at these companies to build better products. They're just not allowed to in most cases.
That is true many times, yes. The other thing I've noticed is that there seems to be a culture in engineering of overcomplicating things, like
Yeah.
overthinking. Everything's always going to go wrong, and like something that I recently designed that we're now getting a patent on, applying for patent on. is an 8L90 valve body with no pulse dampeners. They're just not there. And I invented this, and I'm very proud of it. And I actually told a buddy of mine who's an engineer at Ford who knows what I was doing because their transmissions use a similar system. And I told him I'm eliminating all of this and I'm making a billet portion of the valve body so that you can live your life with no pulse dampeners. And this guy about freaked out. He's like, it's not going to shift right. Oh, we tried that. You're going to have problems with that transmission. And I'm like, to be honest, I don't want to hear it from the people that gave us the 6R80. So what I'm going to tell you, yeah, I'm not interested. So I went ahead and spent my own money to design this product anyway, because I truly believed it was going to work. We got done testing it about a week ago in a 1,000 horsepower C7 Corvette, and it shaved about 100 milliseconds off every shift. It worked perfectly. It was airtight. We eliminated 16 moving parts from the valve body, 16. And there's 16 of the most likely ones to fail. That's 16 things in your transmission that we just made it impossible to go wrong because they now no longer exist. So it sounds to
Yeah.
me like Mr. OEM didn't know what he was talking about, and Mr. NextGen did. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of falsehoods in this industry. There's a lot of overthinking. There's a lot of bean counting. It's very complicated, but I think it all revolves around the OEMs being more worried about their earnings reports than their customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost everything seems to be that way anymore. Even Toyota's going that direction,
I
which
know,
is
I
which
know.
is crazy to me. That I mean, Toyota used to be. I've got old Toyotas, 2008, and that thing just still shifts like brand new. 235,000 miles. I'm like, you can't tell me we could build transmissions like that in 2008, 2005, and all of a sudden we can't now. It's just
You want to know something?
ridiculous.
You bring up a really good point, and that's another thing I want people to know about what we design is I am so inspired by the fact that there are million-mile Toyota transmissions that are on one set of bands and clutches. And seals. I'm so impressed by that when I started designing these parts, I spent my own money on a bunch of 80s and 90s Lexus LS 400, 80 series Toyota Land Cruiser, Toyota Avalon Camry. I bought a bunch of valve bodies from those exact vehicles. And I said, what were they doing that we're not doing today? And frankly, it was all the valves were, precision ground steel. A lot of them had seals on them. The things that we designed for these 10 speeds and 8 speeds and all this, we're trying to design these things the way Toyota would have done it in 1991 when they were trying to take Cadillac and Lincoln's lunch money, and they did it. They
Yeah.
did it. That is part of my
Yeah.
inspiration for what I do and what my team does.
That's really cool. I mean, I don't do what you guys do. So, but if I was going to do something like that would be what I would want. Like, what was the best model we had? Let's go figure out what they did and replicate it, because it didn't matter what car you bought from Toyota for a while. It was like 15 years of just insanely solid transmissions and it didn't matter what you did to them.
Yeah.
I see people neglect Toyotas. I ask them, have you changed your transmission fluid? It's like 200,000 miles. They haven't done anything to it. I'm like, what, how is it even still working? But it's
Steal
a
everything.
Forerunner or something. Yeah.
Steal everything. Steel valves,
Yeah.
sealed valves, really thick separator plates, things that you find at NextGen in 2025 and nowhere else in the automotive industry. So I know what you're talking about, and that's why I look to that design culture to fix these problems. And that's information that I wish I could get out to the masses. Is listen, like they're not making things like they used to. They're making them to fail. And you want to know something? Not only did I buy all those Lexus and Toyota and all that craziness, I also bought everything that sucked. I bought early Range Rover valve bodies. I bought Chrysler 42 RLE valve body. I bought everything that sucked too. And I was like, and what did these guys do wrong? And you know what I found?
Yeah.
The exact opposite. I found what they do in General Motors 10 speeds. I found crappy aluminum valves. They're made at a company called Macleon. Look them up. Send me a letter. I don't care. Google my address. Send it. Macleon, who makes valves for most OEMs, many of the big OEMs. And it is my opinion that they make garbage products, in my opinion. And they are not worried about quality, in my opinion. And they're worried about having maximum margins, selling the cheapest stuff to companies that don't care about reliability, in my opinion. Gotta throw that in
So
there
if
for the legal team.
yeah, so if someone's looking at a I would get this question all the time. I'm looking for a half ton truck. Which one would you buy? And I'm like second gen Toyota Tundra, but they want a new truck. So why did Ford? So GM and Ford had the same. You say similar valve bodies up until like 2020 ish
They were almost
in this 10
identical.
speed.
It was 2017
Okay.
and 2018 production year on the General Motors side. They are almost identical to the Ford valve bodies that were used in anything that did not have the manual valve. The manual valve was used in electronic shift vehicles such as the Lincoln Navigator. The ones that did not have a manual valve had a column shifter. It felt more like the mechanism you'd find in a 4R70W or something old school. Those valve bodies are almost identical. The spring rates, the valves themselves, the separator plate, they're all almost identical. And many of those parts probably interchange, to be honest.
Okay. So, and then around 2020, GM changed the internals, and that's when it all started going south for them.
Well, it was kind of
2019.
terrible. It was pretty bad before. The 10R80 has gotten a lot of bad attention. Look, so that's another thing that we got to hit on, and your viewers are going to get value out of. A lot of them say, well, what if I just got a Ford? I thought, though, is that the
Right.
better speed? That's a common question that I see and that my staff get. And what I tell people is, I, I, if I really had to guess, the 10L80 and 10L1000 is probably slightly worse. And this is just a guess. They're both really not that impressive. What I would tell you is the 10R80's got its own problems. The latch valves get stuck. The transmission actually doesn't need the latch valves for anything. In fact, the new 10R140s, they eliminated the latch valves. We had a kit for that. I wonder where they got the idea. I don't know. So the early 10R80 and early 10L80 also have problems. We have kits for them. We have valve bodies for them. We build them. We've been down this road before. It's not new to us. But as far as the rear wheel locking up crisis, that's patently anything with feed limit valves, which is all 10-speed Allisons and 2019 and above 10L80s.
Yeah. So the Fords technically have a better valve body, but they had the drum issue up until like 2022. Would you say that newer Fords are, I mean, valve body to valve body, are they more solid than the GMs just in the valve body area?
They are all machined wrong at the compensator
Mm.
feed valve. So, and this can cause the gear train to melt down. So, something that I designed on the Ford side was a billet steel O-ringed compensator feed valve. The 10R140s, we thought that we had a manufacturing issue with them because we had a bunch of them where it was really hard to move our compensator feed valve. And we ended up going in a bunch of valve bodies with a depth micrometer and discovering that they were about half a thou smaller at the very bottom. What I believe happened here is the reaming tool that's used to cut the hole was probably not able to go down all the way because they're a little bit conical in shape at the end. And what was likely happening, and this is just a theory, but the problem is documented, is that the reamer was not able to go deep enough for its maximum outside diameter to be achieved. And so 10R140, and we found 2024s and 5s with this problem. So I don't believe that Ford has any knowledge of this. I probably just gave it to them for free. They'll send me a nasty letter. It's okay. And oh, companies are terrible. They'll send you an ugly letter and then just not sue you. I mean, what are you going to do? It's true. Go. I don't know. Insert expletive here. But my point is that they had a lot of manufacturing issues, quality issues. The other thing is that they're made out of way lower quality aluminum. So that's something I was really impressed about with early Toyota and Lexus products. That aluminum felt almost like iron. I mean, it was so dense. It was so low porosity. Porosity is a big deal. We've cut some of these valve bodies in half, and the porosity is so high that it's like, what the hell is this? Like, this is not going to live a long time. That's part of the reason you need these crazy billet steel valves and everything, is because they use such garbage material that as the valves travel back and forth, it has a really aggressive erosive effect. So they're just poorly manufactured. Look, we build hundreds of 10-speed Fords as well. So I try to tell people, if you think one is magically better than the other, that's not it. Here's what I tell people, because a question that I get asked probably hundreds of times. So what the hell truck do I buy? Here's my answer. Two options. One is an older one and two is a newer one. If you want to buy an older one, set aside the amount of money necessary to do all your reliability upgrades, move on with your life. If you want to buy a newer truck, then all three of them, the big three, have radical issues that need to be addressed. And the aftermarket is working very hard to address those issues. We get paid the big bucks to fix them. So we don't get paid anything if we can't design something that helps you. So there is capitalistic pressure on us to fix those problems for you. And most of those problems are fixed at any given time if you just do some Googling. So what I tell people, drive them all. See which one you like the most. See which one fits your needs. Find the vehicle that's right for you before you worry about reliability, because all of them have reliability issues. Once you find the one that's a good fit for you in terms of comfort and features and appearance and everything else, then make sure you have the capital necessary to do the reliability upgrades that matter to your vehicle. None of them are perfect and none of them are hopeless. You have to approach any of them with sober mind and know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's good, because I've always wanted to have some better answer for people on the channel. I always get comments with it, and I just never have a good answer. It's always not what they want to hear, like, don't buy a new vehicle. There's your guarantee to not have a problem. But so if you bought a new truck, let's say I buy a new GM 10 speed, when would you upgrade the valve body? Would you, I
Day
mean, are
one.
you someone, obviously you're a little biased day one, but that's it. So the upgrade kit is day one. And then at least you feel like, okay, it's not going to degrade like the OEM over time, and I'm not going to have as much risk to the transmission over time.
So here's what I'll tell you. So yeah, I am biased, but facts are true. The sky's blue no matter how you feel about it. So I'll speak in facts. Let's say, I'll go back to the whole like human health reference. Let's say that humans had a warranty that you won't develop heart disease or lung issues for 40 years of your life. That doesn't mean to smoke cigarettes and eat cheeseburgers for 40 years. That's not what it
Yeah.
means. What it means is up until that point, somebody else assumes the bill to correct the issue if they even can. So, what I tell people is that if you want to install these upgrades on day one, what you're doing is you're preventing the majority of these problems from even being able to happen. And people are like, but what about my warranty? My analogy for that is like going to McDonald's and asking for a hamburger and saying, well, you know what? This hamburger tastes like crap. I'm going to have them remake it. Well, it's McDonald's. It's always going to taste bad. You're at McDonald's. They don't sell quality food, they sell convenience and franchises. You're in the wrong place if you think they sell quality food. So I tell people the warranty doesn't matter if the warranty is backed by somebody who's committed to doing it incorrectly anyway. So what I tell people is there's something called the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been expert witness for cases around lemon law and things like that. So I do have qualifications on the automotive end of things. The standard that courts have that I have seen, go to a lawyer for any actual lawyer advice, but the standard that I have seen applied and the standard that's written about in the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act is that if they cannot demonstrate that a modification you made caused that problem to happen, demonstrate a clear nexus between those two things, they owe you coverage. And the reason this standard exists is because they don't want people getting their warranty voided for, say, their engine because they got a head unit for their radio, or you got window tints, so now it's your fault that the frame snapped in half. It's to prevent
Right.
squabbles like that then murky up the court system. So if you install this kit, maybe they can void the transmission warranty. They'll probably try, but they can't void the engine. They can't void your suspension. They can't void your air condition. They can't touch those things. It's not legal. Again, talk to a lawyer for hard advice, but I've been doing this a long time. They can't screw you out of those things.
And it's a crazy thing to think about. Because I've gone through this cycle in my head, thinking, oh, if I buy a 25, maybe I'll just ride out that stock valve body. And then it kind of sours the purchase, right? If you're looking at a new truck and you're spending 60 grand, you're like, I shouldn't have to tear the thing apart it's such a weird world we live in right now.
You know what mistake a lot of
It's
people
crazy.
make? And I try to tell people, but I think they're like, oh, well, of course you think that. You're at NextGen. Of course you think that. Listen, pretend I'm not, because what I'm about to say is a fact no matter where I work. The bottom line is running the factory valve body until it fails. It's not like a shaft where it just snaps. It slowly fails. And it causes clutches to wear out faster and a torque converter to wear out faster, bushings faster. So many times what people don't understand is that installing these upgrades and modifications on day one versus day 60,000 miles or 60,001, so you're out of warranty, that can be the difference between a 100,000 mile transmission and a 500,000 mile transmission. Because that's 60,000 miles of the clutches shifting poorly, cross leaks, all the other BS, detracting from their long term reliability. Again, it's no different. Like if somebody else said, I'll pay your medical bills, but you can smoke cigarettes from the time you come out the womb until you're 40, and I'm going to cover your health care until you're 40. If somebody said they were going to cover my health care till I'm 40, I would not go out and start smoking crack. It doesn't make sense. And the
Yeah.
reason people feel that way is it's not because they're dumb or that they just don't know what they're talking about. It's because they don't have access to the information that I do as a professional in this industry. And I want to help people. I want to help people. NextGen's a healthy company. I don't need to be Jeff Bezos. I want to help people. And the way I do that is with information. That's why this whole conversation is about information. I've tried to back everything I say up with information because facts can't be biased. Maybe the person displaying them is, but the sky's blue no matter how you feel about it. So that's my opinion.
One question I had, and I've seen your guys' answer to this, but so if someone's in the situation where like I just saw a 2023 Duramax 3-liter with 28,000 miles on the flatbed going to GM, has to get a new valve body, right? And is there a way that someone can actually get a dealership to put your valve body in instead of the dealers, or is it a situation where they have to just get the dealer one and then just upgrade it after they get the warranty work done?
We have had tons of dealers every day. I mean, it's a common thing. We have tons of dealers who buy both the do it yourself kits, the Project Carbon valve body upgrade kits, and the complete valve bodies. Now, as for what combination of words are being exchanged between the consumer and the dealer, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of choice language and lemon law this and my lawyer that. I'm sure there's a lot of that going on to where dealing with the customer becomes more expensive than paying us to get parts out to them. So I'm sure some of that's in play. But what I would say is they don't want to come out of pocket on stuff. And some General Motors reps have been really aggressive about not paying a third party, even if it fixes the problem. And the other thing is that if you look at the NHTSA filing for the rear wheel locking up issue, General Motors is knowingly misinforming the public and saying that there is no mechanical solution and that they're going to do a software upgrade.
Yeah.
What does software do to resolve a mechanical issue? I mean, it's just really absurd.
Yeah.
Honestly, to me, it's kind of a middle finger to the consumer. They're really giving consumers a one finger salute because they clearly don't think that they can think for themselves. The average person, like Tesla, I'll give you an example. This is something that Tesla does that I literally can't wrap my head around. They have an issue with control arms snapping on the Model X and Model S Plaid. Apparently, there's some sort of software over the air update that supposedly makes this less likely to happen. What can you possibly put Look, I'm not a software engineer, but I know enough about software because there is overlap with my profession. What combination, what chain of information can you put in that software in any language that's going to prevent a control arm from breaking? I mean, you people are
Yeah.
idiots, and the worst part is that they think that consumers are stupid enough. So this is the kind of stuff they do. It's not going to change. The reality is that you have to understand the OEM and the franchisee, the dealership, they are they're boyfriends. Okay, they are up each other's. You know what? One is not on your side if the other is not. If General Motors says you're not doing that, the dealership is going to say, I have a franchise agreement that my entire retirement depends on. So I'm going to side with daddy over here and do what GM says. You can't trust the dealership to fix all your problems. It's just a fact. They never fixed the 4L60. They never fixed the 6L50. They never fixed the 8L45. And they're never going to fix the 10L80 or 1000. It's a fact.
That software thing really bugged me. That was probably one of my first videos. I actually am in software engineering. So it's when I read stuff like that, I know exactly what they're doing. And then I think the first thing I thought of was, how the hell did this not get quality assurance before it got it? So why do you even need the software update? Because you should have tested every scenario to not lock up two clutches at once before this ever went out. So the fact that they actually had a recall to sort of try to prevent a rear wheel lockup, that should have never been something that happened anyway.
You know,
It's insane to me.
I agree. I agree. And, part of the blame here, it really has to be on regulators. I'm being honest and I'm trying to be fair to General Motors, even though they are not fair to me. They know exactly who I am. They don't like me. That's fine. I don't like them. Welcome to the club. But I'm being fair to them. A lot of this is on regulators. So what do I mean? Uh, they keep pressuring them to come out with these crazy higher gear transmissions to minimize tailpipe emissions in domestic and global markets. And as a result, that's part of the reason you see 8 and 10 and now 11 and 12 speed transmissions. They're trying to give the engine a greater quantity of gear ratios to choose from to stay in the most stoichiometrically efficient range that they can. This is a big selling point with these products, is that they're good for tailpipe emissions, fuel economy, things like that. The issue is that they suck. And the bigger issue is that by the time they get far enough into the life cycle of one of these units where they can actually start making it reliable, they have to come out with something else. So 8L90 is a good example. They had that transmission out for 5 years before they realized it's probably worse than the 10L80 and 1000. I truly, in my heart of hearts, I think the 8L90 is even worse. It's a really good debate, but it's, in my opinion, worse. And what I will tell you is the 8L90 could not meet the emissions regulations necessary to continue selling some of these larger engine vehicles, the 5.3, the 6.2. They had to get rid of it. So even if they had the good faith to try and fix the problem, or they wanted to call us and license our pulse dampener delete for this thing so that we could, have it in every vehicle and they could charge the consumer a few $100 extra, but it would be a radically reliable transmission. They can't. They got to stop doing it. Either that or they got to buy emissions credits. And the shareholders, it all goes back to the shareholders, are not interested in these companies buying emissions credits. The only company that gets away with that in mass is literally Dodge, because people love Hellcats and Trackhawks,
Mm.
actually profitable performance vehicles. If Chevy right now released a Chevy Equinox with 700 horsepower, soccer moms everywhere would be very confused. But when Jeep released the Grand Cherokee Trackhawk, every rapper had to have one. Dodge is the only
Yeah.
company that can get away with this. Most people cannot. Shareholders will not let them buy emissions credits.
Yeah. The EPA is really, I mean, that's why you look at AFM and DFM technology in the V8s of General Motors engines since 2007 has really ruined their reliability. It doesn't matter what flavor of it. You go from building super reliable V8s to not being able to build them anymore. And then you look at I get a lot of questions. People say, well, I'll just buy the 8-speed GM, the Silverado with the 2.7 and the 8-speed, because then I'm avoiding the 10-speed problems. What's the valve body like in the 8-speed?
So everything, it's worse. It's significantly worse, and it has a lot of
Oh,
the same
geez.
stuff. So they have normally open and normally closed shift valves. They're huge leak points. The porosity of the castings is extremely high. I'm very sure it's the same supplier, but I'm not 100% sure. It features the same feed limit valve system, but they call it an AFL valve. It's the same thing. I don't care what they call it. It actually has an additional system called pulse dampeners. It is so problematic that I actually reinvented the valve body, and we have a CNC machine to billet aluminum one piece, lower half, lower portion, that eliminates them, and you plug them off. The 8L90 and 8L45, look, we exist, so you're out of the forest, you can fix it. There was nobody before us that had a true long-term trustworthy fix, but I can tell you now, no better. No better. And in my opinion, and I like to think my opinion really matters on this specific topic, it's worse.
Wow. That's a bummer.
Want me to tell you?
uh,
Or like, well, but what if I really want one of those trucks and it's got that transmission? Here's what I'll tell you. If I right now had to buy one of those vehicles with the 8L90 or even a 10L80 or a 10-speed Allison, do you think I would be worried about transmission issues? No, absolutely not. I would install the parts I designed to make this not a problem anymore. My goal is to give 1990 Toyota or Lexus LS400 transmission reliability to people with General Motors 10 speeds and 8 speeds. And many other transmissions. I mean, we service dozens of different types of transmissions here, but on topic, the later model General Motors units.
so the difference between the valve body rebuild kit and the full valve body that you sell, how many would you say are just, you were mentioning before that they were sort of out of spec, these valve bodies, and that's really why, or they get worn over time. That's another disadvantage of not doing the rebuild kit first, is you might wear the internals out a little bit over time. So are those housings, someone's got 60,000 miles on them, is there a way? There's not really a way they can test, I would assume, without really specialized tools to see if, if they've got a bad actual housing.
Well, here's what I'll say. So there are some ways that you can do in the garage. And the automotive industry goes to great lengths to make sure people don't know stuff like this. So something you can do when you're installing a kit like this is you can actually put the valve in a closed position and put a little bit of oil in that circuit until it's up to, the top, and then just walk away and come back in a little bit and see if it drained out. If it drained out at atmospheric pressure, that valve's clearly not tight. So you can do that for every single circuit in the valve body. I know it's a bit tedious, but you can do it. So there are things you can do at home to at least get some sort of idea. Obviously, the most accurate thing is flow testing and vacuum testing, pulse testing, everything else. Like that is the gold standard. But like I said, there's things you can do at home, like what I'm mentioning, that will at least give you a pretty good idea. Now, what I will say is that the vast majority of valve bodies can be corrected with the kit. It's probably 90%. I'd say about 90%. And maybe they won't be absolutely perfect, but they'll be a lot better than brand new, because brand new is not a strong standard. So it's uncommon that a valve body is what's needed, although some people do. What I would say is some people say, well, what's the price difference for? One is us doing it for you, obviously. Two is all of the electronics. We bought the equipment to remanufacture these electronics here, in-house. So General Motors will not sell you these solenoids or anything like that. Maybe that's changing soon, but at this point in time, I'm not aware that they sell you these things. So we got the ability to remanufacture them using the factory componentry in-house. One thing I will say is that the solenoids in these are actually pretty reliable. They're not perfect, but they're pretty reliable. I have never heard of a solenoid failure on one of our 10-speed Allison or 10-speed GM valve bodies, and I believe the reason that is that we bring temperatures down. and we prevent valves from getting stuck. Sometimes when you deal with a bad solenoid, it's actually a valve that's stuck, and the solenoid is trying to force it into the eccentric or concentric position, open or closed. And so that can put a lot of stress on these piezoelectronic systems. So that is something that happens. A lot of solenoid issues are actually just hydraulic issues. And then third is bore repair. We execute bore repair all around the valve body, whether it needs it or not. And that requires obviously, dowels that are within a thousandth of an inch in size. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes it requires reaming, sometimes machining. But that's another thing you're paying for when you execute a complete valve body. So a complete valve body is always the ultimate solution, but the Project Carbon DIY kit is absolutely enough for the majority of people, especially with the shift valves.
Yeah. Yeah, I should probably mention too, and I might put this at the beginning of the video. I am not sponsored. Do you want to say anything about the fact that you're not paying me? And I communicated with Will on Facebook, and then we just got set up for this recording. And I wanted to ask you a bunch of questions. And there are a lot of people that think, for whatever reason, I wish I was getting paid for it, but I'm not. But there's also a level of, honesty where if I'm not getting paid for something, I can say whatever I want about the company. I can do whatever I want. I can follow up videos and if you go do something off the rails, I have, I'm not tied to some contract. So
Well, no sponsorship here. I don't know. We don't really do sponsorships. We don't have to. So I don't know. I don't know what else to tell
yeah.
people that I guess they believe the earth is flat too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's frustrating when you try to bring information and you think the first time I started talking about NextGen, I didn't know who you were, Will, anybody. I watched Fabrat's video, and then we started seeing all this stuff in the groups, and it's just a high volume of problems. And that's what made me make the video. I had nothing, I'd never communicated with you guys. And then you guys came and commented, and people are like, oh, it's definitely a collaboration. It's like,
dude, I
what?
don't even read the
There are other companies out there too.
collaboration. Man, you want to know what's crazy to me is like we're getting all this attention because we fixed a very real problem for what now appears to be almost a million people whose vehicles have this issue. We fixed the problem and GM didn't. We don't need to pay somebody to talk about us. But
Yeah.
look, man, you want to know something? There's an entire community of people that truly and sincerely believe that the earth is flat. There's an entire community of people that the people who control the Department of Motor Vehicles should be the people that control our healthcare. There's a whole group of
Yeah.
people that believe that. There's a whole group of people that believe a lot of really dumb things. Just remember, flying spaghetti monster is a real religion. So I don't know what to tell people like that. To be honest, I don't feel like they deserve to hear anything. There's no sponsorship. We don't sponsor people. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they should go to therapy.
Yeah. I'll probably go do some research too. There are some other companies that have, I don't know if they came after you. Again, I never researched timelines or anything of who came out with fixes or if they're copying you or what, but there are other companies out there. I've seen folks buy valve body rebuild kits from them as well. So, it's not like you guys are the only ones doing it. So
To be
I'll
honest,
put them as links as well. And
most of the other ones I've seen are people buying ours and reselling it, which is fine. They're
yeah,
wholesale. I don't care. But
yeah,
any of them that come with a plate, it's ours. Any of them that come with rings, they're ours. Any of them that come with feed limit valves are ours. You'd be surprised how much stuff that's not branded as next gen is next gen. I've seen a couple other companies that claim to sell these things. Look, I'm good buddies with people that work at some of these companies, so I'm not going to try and be a dick to anybody. But here's what I'll say because it's true, and nobody can get mad at me for saying something true. Ask them to send you pictures of what they upgraded, and then take those pictures, if they even send them to you, and say, what does this cost to do? And then weigh that against the cost of the product and ask yourself, am I getting screwed? You probably are.
Yeah, it's man, it is a weird, such a
I,
weird,
I can think of a couple
such
companies
a weird situation.
talk valve bodies to people right now and pretending that's not what they are. So I'm telling you, if you're a consumer,
Man,
dude, I swear to God, you want to know something? I'm going to get canceled for this. So make sure that you emphasize this. I'm always ready for the canceling. Make them show you what you're paying for. Even us. Make us do it. Make us do it. We already do, but make us do it.
right?
Hold everyone to the same standard because I'm not going to name anybody, but they know who they are and they're going to see this and they're going to text me and be like, "Dude, you went off a little bit. Like that's kind of inappropriate." You know what's inappropriate? Charging people thousands of dollars for a stock valve body or a stock valve body with a couple of springs in it and pretending that
Yeah.
you fixed the problem. It's a lie. It's a lie. So,
Why? I have
yeah,
so I've heard rumors. Why wouldn't GM? And I'm imagining they could just take your kit
yeah.
and copy it, and I mean, they could have done this years ago with all of the transmissions, but they don't do it. They don't, and then they don't take, like, say what you fixed 10 years ago, and apply those same principles to a new trend. They just continue to do this. What is it? Just because they hope that maybe if we can get things through warranty, we actually won't get forced to do a recall, and there's a chance that it's just not going to matter. Because if you look at their sales numbers, people still buy their stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
simple. It's really two things. One is that it doesn't make financial sense. There's more money to be made in making garbage that just barely survives outside of warranty. That's more profitable. So that's reason number one. And reason number two is that they just don't respect aftermarket engineers. They think we're idiots, even though they are empirically the idiots. So it's those two things together.
man, yeah. I mean, it's just it's bizarre to me that you guys put all the information out. You show your product. You show all the parts, the updated parts. You explain it all. You
Oh
explain
yeah.
all your research, and they could just buy your valve. If they really wanted to, buy the valve body kit, test it themselves, and copy it. But they still don't. They still don't do it. It's crazy.
Well, I have precedence in use, and obviously we protect our intellectual property. So I invite them to try it and watch what happens. They'll owe me a lot of money. So, look, man, these companies are they're a lot more incompetent than you may be thinking they are. If you think that General Motors has a bunch of eggheads that are, they just spend all day thinking about how to make the company better and everything, dude, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I have spoke to some of the highest levels of people at some of the biggest OEMs. And one of them is probably going to see this that I worked with or consulted for. And I'm telling you now, with the exclusion of maybe enough people I could count on one hand, almost all of them were literally the world's biggest idiot. And I told them, I don't have a whole lot of respect for OEMs because their entire business model is peddling garbage stuff to people who think it's high quality and then recapitalizing in the service and repair market. Service and repair is a huge part of their income. It's not selling the new cars, it's charging you to fix them. Ask anyone who owns a dealership what their service recovery is. They will have a number in their mind that they are ready to tell you. And if they don't, their
Yeah.
dealership is running out of money.
Yeah, man. I get attacked for having any planned obsolescence videos. If I say that that's what I believe is happening, I don't have the engineering data that you have to sort of prove it or the contacts, but just looking at anecdotal data that to me, anecdotal data is like, if you combine enough of it, it becomes a lot of, enough real data that you can look at NHTSA reports and enough data out there that it starts to paint some sort of a picture. And it seems obvious to me, but I get called out all the time by I'm not going to name names, but YouTubers that have been around a while, and I'm sure they've got, deals with OEMs, and they're always talking to their engineers, and they don't want to lose those relationships, and because that's their bread and butter. But I have a day job, so I don't need to care. So
Well, I'll come to your defense on the planned obsolescence thing. So here's what I'll tell you, and I really hope if anybody gets anything out of this video, it is this. Hear me out. I'm an automotive engineer. I design car parts for a living. Planned obsolescence is not only a thing, it's such a big thing. There are seminars, there are consultants, there are books. Planned obsolescence is one of the most important parts of engineering in the automotive industry. And to me, it's malpractice. It's malpractice. Imagine, again, medicine. Imagine if you had open heart surgery and the purpose of the surgery was to get you down the road 6 years and then you die. That's called malpractice. Planned obsolescence is not a conspiracy theory. It is literally a seminar, a book, a consultant. I've had people ask me, how can we make this fail after the 2 year warranty or the 4 year warranty? I don't want work like that. I'm a consultant. I don't want work like that. Planned obsolescence is not a conspiracy. I'm going to get a nasty letter because of this. I'll wipe my ass with it and mail it back. I don't care. Planned obsolescence is real and it is the state of the art in the automotive industry. And before you spend your hard earned money in this industry, know that I said that. Know that I said that. Okay. So I'm going to get a lot of nasty. Probably getting them the moment you upload this, but I'm telling you, planned obsolescence is real. It is a whole industry.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yes,
When I start to see Toyota go down that path, I was like, okay, this is it.
it is a whole. There are people you can pay to come into your business and teach you how to make everything blow up the moment the warranty's done. I'm telling you now,
Yeah.
planned obsolescence is exactly what's going on. I'm an insider. I'm in this industry. I'm not bound by a non-disclosure agreement. And frankly, we don't do planned obsolescence at NextGen Drivetrain. We have lifetime warranties on most things. If we did planned obsolescence, we're idiots. We don't do that here. So I'm not hurting myself to say this. This industry loves planned obsolescence. I've heard it out of the mouths of countless other executives.
Pretty sad, man.
Yeah.
Depressing a little bit.
I-
When do you think there was a period of a brand like I just always pick Toyota because that's what I've had the best luck with long-term reliability with them. I've had good luck with old GMs and maybe some old Fords, but it's still that's Toyota's been kind of the go-to for me. Was there a period of time or a brand that you would say that maybe that planned obsolescence wasn't as pervasive?
Yes, yes. Land Rover, Land Rover, Land Rover, and their boyfriends at Jaguar. Land Rover and Jaguar are two peas in a pod, and they are two companies who have been in financial tumult their entire lives. And they were recently, well, not recently, but they were acquired by a parent firm, a private equity firm, who wanted to bring these brands back to life. And they realized that the only way they were going to come back to life is if they made money doing something other than selling garbage cars to people. And then the light bulb went off. They can charge you to fix the garbage car. And so that ended up saving them over the past maybe 10 to 20 years. And then a lot of other companies started seeing these companies who are very financially unhealthy made a turnaround by selling unreliable cars. And that's why I call it the Land Rover mentality. I observed them doing it first, in my opinion. In my opinion, they are so proud to sell you something that sucks, in my opinion. And it makes them tons of money. And other companies started to see this. The other thing, this was around the same time as the dot-com bubble. And if you remember that time, I was pretty young, but if you remember that time, if you had dot-com anything, everyone was throwing money at it. And automotive companies were like, what do we do? We have to find a way to make more money. And so they started getting creative. Then 2008 happened. They had to get creative again. And so these companies have been trying to catch up with the rest of the automotive industry for a very long time. There is not a lot of money in selling cars. There's way more in fixing cars. Just remember, Ferrari and Ford have very similar market capitalizations. Okay? Now, Ford is a way bigger company than Ferrari. But Ferrari's worth, if I'm not mistaken, actually more than Ford, significantly more. Look it up.
Wow.
You know why? One, they're a luxury brand who just happens to sell cars. But two, they make a lot of money fixing those unreliable cars. And Ford's like,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it worked for Land Rover, and Land Rovers suck. So if it could work for Land Rover, it could absolutely work for a domestic nameplate Americana brand like Ford or GMC or Chrysler.
Oh, what a mess. Maybe the last question, completely off topic. What do you think of ZF transmissions? And say, I see people talking about going to Ram as the truck solution instead of Ford and GM, and they trust their ZF transmission more. What do you think about their current offering?
Well, here's what I'll tell you on that. So I recently got a call from a bigwig over at ZF, and he actually has a 10-speed Allison. And he called us because of it, and we ended up getting in touch. We had talked about doing some consulting. Like I told you, OEMs do not respect aftermarket engineers, in my opinion. And so here's what I'll tell you. We build a ton of Hellcats, Trackhawks, Bentleys, Rolls Royces, Audis, Volkswagens, Lamborghini Urus, you name it. ZFs are in almost everything European, and a lot of domestics under the Stellantis umbrella. ZFs are slightly better, in my opinion, than other things in the automotive industry right now. Here's the issue: slightly better doesn't mean good. We build a lot of them because a lot of them fail. They are optimized for fuel economy and modularity. That's why the computer's in the transmission. Now, here's what I would challenge you to do if you're thinking about buying one. Call any transmission shop and say, I have a insert ZF transmission here, automatic. Can you rebuild this in-house? I promise you pretty much 100% of them are going to say no. At least with 10R80, maybe someone will work on it in-house. ZFs, especially the 8 speeds, are extraordinarily complicated. They require tons of special tools. The computer is in the transmission, getting baked at the temperature of the transmission at all times. Take a lap, put it in a sealed bag, put it in boiling water, and boil it for however many years you're going to drive a vehicle. And wait, that's not going to cause a problem? I mean, come on. You're in the computer game. You probably know better than I do. And if you think about it, look at all these people that play, I don't know, League of Legends, RuneScape, all these computer games competitively. What do they have? They have crazy cooling systems for their computers. Why? Because it keeps them
Yeah.
alive. So when you put the computer in the transmission, it's now not exposed to this beautiful 68 degrees of temperature. It's exposed to about 200 degrees all the time. It's
Yeah.
radically safe, and it makes you buy a computer with every transmission. The ZF Powerline 8 that's coming out in the Cummins is not new. It has been in Europe for a long time, and it's not very reliable, but it is better than most other things. The bar's just really low. That's why it looks better, okay? So what I tell people, and mark my words, the ZF, and we have one in hands already. I'm designing a kit for it right now. Part of it's done. The ZF Powerline 8 transmission is going to be a nightmare. Not as bad as the 10-speed Allison or 10R140 in my opinion, but I'm predicting it's going to be kind of a train wreck. So
Wow.
that's my answer for that. As usual, we're going to be there to save the day. I'm just telling you, nobody cares about long-term reliability. I talked to ZF about all the things I already invent for them. They know who I am. They know who NextGen is. I invent all sorts of things to make them better. I have a pulse dampener kit for those too, a pulse dampener delete kit. They just don't want to hear it. They are too busy lauding in their own egos to hear what somebody has to say who has fixed a problem that they left for us. It's not going to be dramatically better.
Man.
I'm telling you, set aside the
Some
money.
warm fuzzies all around.
Well, you want to know something? I'm honest. Here's what I
Yeah.
tell: set aside the money necessary to do reliability upgrades to whatever vehicle you want to buy, and that's it. Yeah, no matter what vehicle you buy, there's something wrong with it. That's just a fact. Even the early Toyotas, they were extraordinarily reliable, but the sound system was pretty terrible. Okay? The Japanese engineers did not know how much Americans enjoy needing hearing aids at the age of 40. They didn't know. So they gave us these garbage sound systems. So you know what you do? If you let's say you have a Toyota Camry, a Toyota Avalon. Let's say you have a Toyota Avalon. You're a 65-year-old boomer. Let's say you have an Avalon and you just love the car. You love everything about the car except the sound system. Okay, in my opinion. So, you know what I would say? Do you drive the car off a cliff or do you just get a sound system? You get a system. And now you love everything about the car. So I tell people that's what you got to do. If you love your truck and not your transmission, call us. If you love your car and not your sound system, call someone who's good at that. If you love your house but you really wish you had a pool, call someone who builds pools. That's my opinion.
So on the topic of trucks, this is probably my last question on half tons.
Yeah.
The Tundra transmission, the new 10-speed. Any issues that you see with that, or is it something that you're not? Do you look at that as a potential rebuild if you need to, or is it something that you look at Toyota and say, no, they're probably not worth designing something for it because you're not going to need to sell as many kits?
Well, I sell tons of Toyota parts. They're for the Ace and Seiki transmissions that were used in the Ram 35 through 5500 for many years. We have billet valve bodies for them, actually. So we've got some pretty crazy stuff for Toyota transmissions. Now, I'm very aware of the problem you're talking about. The concern for me getting into that market is that it does not appear that they're willing to spend the kind of money to fix those problems that people with larger diesel trucks and stuff are. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe we will go into that frontier, but it's on my radar. I know all about the direct shift 8AT and 10AT. I've never worked directly with Toyota, although I have manufactured and designed parts for them in the aftermarket. I absolutely do think about it, and I take your opinion seriously, but I don't know what's going to happen with that yet. If I discover that the market is there to support spending the money to design the parts, then if that's the case, then we will.
Well, I don't think I have any more questions for you. And now I'm not going to look at any new trucks. Now you've given my instincts. I'll just keep driving my old Sequoia,
Dude.
old 6-speed. Well, thanks, Nate. I appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully people get some value from it. I'm sure they will, and then they can make their decision on their own. Like you said, pick your car, old, new, whatever, and be prepared to repair it.
Yeah, 100%, dude.